Chair recognizes Senator from 21st.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the Senator yield?
Yes, Mr. Leader.
Under your amendment, which seeks to establish that the crime that, I guess the primary offense would have to be a felony, this would exclude someone who is driving under the influence?
It would exclude someone who's driving under the influence from the crimes contained here, unless it was their fourth DUI, which is a felony. It would also, however, almost anybody who gets arrested for a DUI, if they're booked into jail, will have their immigration status checked anyway. And that's an important point to make, is that anyone who is arrested and taken to jail under the Safe Communities program will have their immigration status checked now. And so, you know, you're capturing that community of people who get booked into jail already. So the real question is, people who would not otherwise be taken to jail, do we want law enforcement to impose these burdens on folks who've committed minor violations? And I don't mean to say a DUI is a minor violation. I just mean...
Does the Senator further yield?
Yes, Mr. Leader.
I understand where you're coming from on the felony standard, but I think it's important to note that, and I hope you would agree with me, that when someone's driving under the influence, that's a very serious criminal offense, and beating one's spouse, which could also be a misdemeanor, is also a very serious criminal offense. And I would hope that you would agree that persons in this country illegally to begin with who are engaging in either one of those activities may be people we don't want in our communities.
I appreciate what the Majority Leader is saying. I believe that in order to draw the appropriate distinction here, we have to be careful in balancing the freedoms of legal Americans to limit the police powers that we have, so that we avoid creating the kind of police state that would be created by allowing minor offenses. If you would like to recommend an amendment that adds DUIs, I know that this body passed a prior law that would make a DUI by an illegal immigrant a felony. And there are other ways to approach those issues.
Chair recognizes from 39th.
Will the Senator yield?
Yes, Mr. Senator.
Isn't it true that racial profiling involves a stopping of a person while they're in locomotion, while they're moving, either walking or driving or otherwise, when the official, the peace officer who stops that person understands that they have not committed any crime? As in the instance when the senator from the 5th was stopped for supposedly having a brake light that wasn't bright enough until when they discovered he was not a person of color, then it was okay. Doesn't racial profiling fundamentally have an element where a person stops another person under the color of law when the person who was stopped they know that person has not committed a crime?
I know that the Senator from the 39th knows well of which he speaks.
Will the Senator further yield?
Yes, Mr. Senator.
If that is indeed the case, isn't it true that the separation of felonies from misdemeanors or city and municipal offenses would not prevent or stop racial profiling in this instance, because that person who is stopped for probable cause for committing a felony will in fact not have committed an offense other than being a person of color in the wrong place at the wrong time?
Mr. Senator, I believe that what this amendment does do is it limits the application of these police powers to instances where there is an articulatable ability or belief that there is a real offense that has been committed, a felony offense that rises above the level of a misdemeanor that our state has determined to be the most serious type of crime. And I believe that taking off the table a vast number of tail light issues or obstruction of rolling through a stop sign, or a variety of these other simple traffic offenses will limit that scope so much that it would be a great improvement on the current bill.
Will the senator further yield?
Yes, Mr. Senator.
Does the senator know that I'm not a lawyer?
I have heard that.
Will the senator further yield?
Yes, Mr. Senator.
Isn't it true that I may not understand the term articulable, but I do understand the right and wrong of racial profiling?
I certainly believe, Mr. Senator, that you understand the right and wrong.
Thank you, Mr. Senator.
Senator from the 54th is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
Yes, Mr. Senator.
Senator, there's been discussion while you've been in the well and previously this evening about this question of transporting or moving an illegal alien. And I draw your attention to lines, I guess we've been talking 288 through 292. Isn't it true, Senator, that the provisions we've talked about has really been the first part of the sentence, and we haven't discussed the provision that says, for the purpose of furthering the illegal presence of the alien in the United States?
That is true, Mr. Senator, but I honestly can't imagine what that means.
Well, Senator, would the senator further yield?
Yes, Mr. Senator.
Would the senator accept that since it is a criminal statute, and criminal statutes are always construed strictly against the state, that the provision would require the state of Georgia to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the person doing the driving, be it to church, be it taking the house help or whatever, all these scenarios, would have to have the intent to further someone's illegal presence in the United States to prove this crime?
I believe that to be true. I do not know, however, what furthering someone's presence means. I mean, it seems to me if you pick somebody up and drop them off at the bus stop, you're furthering their presence at the bus stop. I mean, if you stop anywhere between here and the border, to me, you're furthering their presence in the United States, would be my interpretation of it. And I just think that I don't know what else that could mean. And so to me, if we're going to criminalize conduct in as broad a swath as this, we need to be very careful in the types of situations we want to apply it to. And I believe that we want to apply it to instances where there are serious crimes committed.
Thank you. Will the senator further yield?
Yes, Mr. Senator.
I did want to follow up on some questioning earlier that I think really brings at least some concern to the issue you've raised, which is aren't there offenses in the criminal code for which it's not clear whether it's a felony or not until an investigation is conducted?
I believe that you know from which you speak. I'm not a criminal lawyer, but...
Well, with Senator further yield?
Yes.
By way of example, you discussed if it was the fourth DUI. How would a law enforcement officer effectuating a stop know whether it was your fourth DUI? Well,
with regard to whether or not the person would be guilty of the crime of harboring or transporting, that would be proved up at trial. So this offense has as an element that you're committing another crime. So if you were committing a fourth DUI, which is a felony, then it would be, you would prove that at trial in the same way you would prove another element. If it's with regard to a curbside immigration status check or an immigration status check in another context, so long as there's a suspicion that there's a criminal suspect in a felony, then they would be allowed to do that. And it would be the same rules would apply in that context.
Will the senator further yield?